Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. So thank you for being here. I really hope that this little 10 to 12 minute talk is just a start of a conversation. What I thought I'd do is give you kind of the new landscape around climate at MIT, because a lot has changed over the last couple months. In doing so, I'll introduce the climate missions, the climate project at the MIT level, but do a little bit of a deeper dive into my vision for the Climate Policy Center, which was also mentioned. So it starts with Sally Kornbluth, who, when she took office, everybody who worked on energy and the environment and climate were a little nervous, right? You don't know what the focus of a new president is going to be. And just right out of the gate, every talk that I saw her give, every meeting that I saw her at, the first thing she talked about was the importance of MIT being a global leader in solving climate change. So we all got excited. She kept using the Rad Lab analogy from World War II, which I'll show you in a second. And like I said, every speech had language like this where MIT has to be bold, they have to be tenacious, they have to bring everything to bear, all the skills and power that MIT has to solving climate change. And so I'm going to do something that's very, very rare for an academic, and I'm going to actually yield time to Sally Kornbluth, who put together this video, which I think will set the stage for her vision of MIT and climate research.
In 1943, MIT's Building 20 was rising fast. The scene was a swarm of activity. One worker would set up nails for the floorboards, while another came right behind, pounding them in, with a third on their heels, erecting posts for the next floor up. An eyewitness said it felt like watching a time-lapse movie, but playing out in real time. There was a war on, with everything at stake, and no time to lose. The magical incubator of Building 20 spawned breakthroughs that helped win World War II. And it demonstrated beyond doubt the power of MIT people to do big things that matter. When the nation set out for the moon, MIT got us there. When pollution threatened Earth's protective ozone layer, MIT scientists were leaders in the effort that saved it. The map of the human genome has been called the greatest scientific undertaking in history, the work of an international consortium led by MIT. And when COVID struck, life-saving solutions depended on fundamental science, daring innovation, and hands-on problem-solving from the people of MIT. MIT is never better than when we come together to solve big problems. I'm Sally Kornbluth, president of MIT, and I invite you to join in MIT's most ambitious project yet, the problem of our overheating planet, our home. By uniting our strengths, we can achieve things that none of us could do alone. So let's roll up our sleeves, grab our shovels, and break new ground together.
So she touched on a few things there. First, I really wish I never got LASIK, because she has these trademark glasses that everybody recognizes, and I just don't have those. But MIT solves problems, right? And MIT has solved the greatest problems that mankind has faced in the past, and climate change is the next problem that MIT is well positioned to solve. Why? Not only are we an engineering school, also technology school, okay. Not only are we an engineering school, but we have the best economics department in the world. We have the best, I'm biased, business school in the world. Climate change by its nature is an interdisciplinary problem. We won't just solve it alone through technology. We need the other disciplines to solve climate change. That is Sally's vision of bringing all of those disciplines to bear to solve this problem. And I think she mentioned one problem that we had a huge hand in solving, and that was the hole in the ozone layer. So Susan Solomon, one of my favorite colleagues in atmospheric science, she discovered the cause of the hole in the ozone layer. She rallied, at the time she was yet to be at MIT, but MIT took it from there to design policy, to design alternatives to CFCs that were causing the hole in the ozone layer. And what we found out since is solving the hole in the ozone layer also brought us very far in solving climate change, or at least in mitigating climate change. So there's been some work that's been done since that has shown that the solution to the hole in the ozone layer led to about 5 to 7 fewer years of greenhouse gas emissions to be emitted. We weren't even trying to solve climate change yet. We were taking a big step in doing so. So that's why MIT is well suited to be a leader in this, to solve this issue in our lives. And that has led to the Climate Project. So this is at the MIT level. This is the outcome of over 300 conversations with MIT faculty and staff to design a system or a program that leverages MIT's strengths in order to solve climate change. And what's come out of that are 6 focus areas. Here's 5 of them, where MIT Central will focus research in each of these, whether it's decarbonizing industries, solving climate and oceans, empowering frontline communities to focus on vulnerable communities, decarbonizing buildings like we're in now, and also inventing new policies that will help incentivize the solutions to climate change, all leveraging another strength of MIT's, which is commercializing technology. But sometimes in order to commercialize technology, you need policy. And that's where the Climate Policy Center comes in. This came out of nowhere. I've been pushing an idea for a Climate Policy Center for the last 2 years. In December, I think it was December, I sat down with Dave Schmidtlein. He sat across from me in his desk and he said, I have just told Sally that I'm willing to endow $25 million to start a Climate Policy Center. What will that Climate Policy Center do? It will serve 2 purposes. One is MIT is brilliant in, I don't know if you heard this phrase while you were a student here, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Unfortunately, sometimes when you let 1,000 flowers bloom, the flowers never talk to each other. So there's so much great work being done at MIT around climate. Some of it is pure science. Some of it, like the center that I run, is, I would say, the basic science behind policy around energy and the environment. Some of it is all about energy. Some of it is all about designing a new fusion reactor for some time in the future. The problem with the 1,000 flowers blooming is nobody is taking stock as to what is going on around campus. And in particular, nobody is thinking about what are the policy implications of a new fusion reactor? What are the policy implications of decarbonized concrete? So one of the problems, or one of the gaps that the Climate Policy Center seeks to fill, is being the connective tissue across all of these different centers to understand what the policy implications are and to put those together, come together on a regular basis to understand how everything fits together, to make sure that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's the first gap that the Climate Policy Center will solve. The second is something that's a little bit more academic-centric, which is academics do not really have the incentive to get into the mud, get into the ditches with policymakers. We have an incentive to publish influential pieces in journals, in academic journals. But to take that academic research to the next level, to actually turn it into actual policy, we really don't have the incentive to do that professionally. So the second gap that the Climate Policy Center seeks to fill is that very gap. And the research scientists that will sit in the Climate Policy Center, as they're embedded in all of these other centers around campus, will be judged by how are they influencing actual policy. Sure, they'll also be judged with are they publishing academic work of the highest standard that MIT is used to, but how many bills have you helped get passed? How many bills have you analyzed? How many conversations have you had with policymakers? Have you taken the research that's happening at MIT and informed those actual policymakers to turn that into legislation? That's the second vision, which I think is the biggest contribution of a climate policy center. Now, how are we going to do that? I see three main conduits for that to happen. The first is that we have to obviously let those policymakers know about the MIT research, the new and important findings that we have, whether it's about fusion or concrete or the impact of a carbon tax on behavior. That research has to be front and center in policymakers so that they can turn that into legislation. How are we going to do that? Well, we got to all get in the room. Everybody has to know what everybody else is working on, whether it's the academics, the policymakers, industry. Everybody has to be in the room so that we could share that knowledge, so that we can turn what we know into actual policy that has an impact. And then finally, we have to incentivize those researchers to actually work on the nitty-gritty details of policy. And unfortunately, right now, academics are on a very different timeline than people in DC. I work on projects that take years to come into fruition. DC policymakers work in hours, days, and weeks. So the Climate Policy Center is going to have to mesh those two different timeframes. And I'm going to have an example of that, a demonstration project where I think it can work. So just an example on each of these that I think is in many ways a demonstration project. And for this, I'm going to draw on what John Sturman has done over the last decade, which has just been so influential in DC and in state policy making and even at a local level. John's dissertation, remarkably, was to take a climate model that might take months to solve and to simulate outcomes and turn that into something that can simulate outcomes in seconds. And he puts that model in front of policymakers, in front of industry, to show them the implications of not just climate change, but of making a difference, whether it's through a carbon tax or through electrification of buildings or electrifications of transportation. And he's done that. He's put that model in front of over 11,000 people. And that has actually moved the needle in DC and in state legislatures in terms of which policymakers care about climate change. And maybe the best example of that is I've seen Mitt Romney bring up his model twice in interviews on the news. So that's an example of showing policymakers the tools and the research that we've done at MIT to have an actual impact. An example of convening was over the last couple years where MIT Sloan got everyone in the room to talk about financial disclosures, to talk about how to design financial disclosures, what can be or should be disclosed and what shouldn't be disclosed. And that, in many ways, has led to the recent SEC outcome about climate disclosures and so on. Finally, I'll end with the demonstration project that's closest to one of my visions in the Climate Policy Center. I hired a postdoc this past fall, and I told him exactly what I just told you. I said, look, half of your time here is going to focus on academic research. We're going to publish good papers in good journals. But the other half of your time has to be flexible enough that if a policymaker comes to us with a problem, we're going to try to solve it. less than 3 weeks after he got on campus, we got a call from Senator Hickenlooper from Colorado, from his staff. His staff said, look, we have this Big Wires Act, which is going to require more transmission to be built. We'd love for MIT to model the outcomes of that act. They gave us 5 different topic areas. Climate was 5th, by the way. It was costs, it was reliability, resiliency, and so on. And I told the postdoc, I said, drop everything you're doing. We're gonna take a model that MIT had already developed that allows for you to model the electricity grid under different scenarios, and you're gonna run that model and give them results. 3 weeks later, we're in DC, briefing Hickenlooper and his co-sponsor staff on the outcomes of that work. Again, if that was an academic project, nobody would see it for 3 months or probably 3 years, right? But in 3 weeks, we had the results. A week after that, Hickenlooper and his co-sponsor are using our numbers in their promotional materials to get other people on board. We had a conversation with the staff last week where this is the two-way street part of it, where given our results, we're making suggestions on how to refine that bill. We have another meeting for another debrief where we've increased the number of senators and members, House members in the room to hear about our research. That's what the Climate Policy Center will do. It'll take the tools and the abilities that we already have at MIT, but focus them in a way that's more useful to policymakers in DC, at the state level, and at the international level. The other thing I'll mention is Hickenlooper is obviously a Democrat. His co-sponsor is a Democrat. I want the second big project to be with the Republican. This is not going to be a wing of the Democratic Party. It's going to take the whole political spectrum to solve climate change. And why did Hickenlooper put climate 5th on the list of things that he cared about? Because he wants Republicans to co-sponsor the bill. And maybe they don't care as much about climate as he does, but they certainly care about resiliency, reliability, and cost. So as we work on projects related to the Climate Policy Center, we're going to be a big tent. And we're going to work on projects across the political spectrum. I truly believe there are things that Republicans will be on board with that will either be adjacent or directly impacting climate. So that's my vision. Again, this is the start of a conversation. So I hope over drinks and over hors d'oeuvres that we could talk more about my vision. And I look forward to those conversations. Thanks a lot.